All right. As Michelle said, I have been stationed at Blodgett Forest Research Station throughout my term. I've spent the last 11 months surveying Blodgett Forest as well as the other Berkeley Forest properties and working with UC Cooperative Extension advisors in addition to the Blodgett and Berkeley Forest staff. I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to continue to serve at Blodgett as a seasonal field crew member through the fall. I just wanted to start my presentation with an acknowledgement of the original stewards of the land that Blodgett resides on. And a longer form of this land acknowledgement is on some signage throughout Blodgett. Blodgett Forest Research Station rests on the unceded lands of the Nisenan, Washoe, Miwok, and Maidu peoples. They stewarded this land for thousands of years prior to colonization and forest removal and contributed to the health and survival of the forest that exists today. We honor and celebrate the persistence of local tribal groups with descendants from these and other indigenous nations while acknowledging the legacy of violence within California's history. So real quick, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, Blodgett Forest is it's one of 5 Berkeley Forest properties located throughout California. Blodgett is located outside Georgetown at around 4,000 feet elevation. It's a little over 4,000 acres of mixed conifer forest, and it is an active timber forest in addition to being a site of a great deal of forestry research and educational outreach. As an active timber forest, most of its budget comes from commercial harvests, and it's able to produce research that's relevant to both industrial timber landowners and smaller private landowners. So starting off, just the brief goals on my surface from the pre-service capacity assessment were to assist with applied forest research and data collection, so inventory and helping researchers take samples and things like that, developing educational outreach materials and assisting with the workshops, and further additionally approving accessibility of forestry education, so making these resources more accessible and working with UC regional academics to do so. So the way I'm going to talk about what I did this year is I'll start by going over what I actually did and the projects I worked on, and then with each category kind of discussing what I learned, but how I will think about that moving forwards and like larger lessons. So the first thing I did when I got to Blodgett was do a fair bit of forest inventory, which was something that I wasn't familiar with. So learning how to use the tree measurement tools and the protocols that you follow for conducting a forest inventory was really valuable and actually enabled me to do a lot of the other work that I did throughout my term and educate other people and train other people on inventory equipment. And because Blodgett has so many different research projects going on, I was able to help with not just the comprehensive Blodgett inventory and post-disturbance, but also inventory for the fire and fire surrogate study, which is looking at mechanical versus prescribed burn treatments and mechanical and prescribed burn treatments in conjunction with each other. So it's really interesting to get to do inventory and follow these different protocols. And then also some different types of fuels measurements and sampling and fire scar measurements. And then also just helping different researchers and student researchers shown here with different various data collection. So with all that inventory, besides just the skills of using the tree measurement tools and getting familiar with the different protocols, I think it was really valuable to see the topics of interest in forestry in California right now, and the research questions that are being investigated with these inventory protocols, and specifically the different ways that you would go about sampling fuels or looking at different forest metrics based on the questions that you're trying to answer. And further the application to major forest health issues like wildfire risk reduction, kind of trying to quantify treatment costs and things like that. Another project from earlier in my term was working to take clips from different cooperative extension folks and turn them into cohesive video series. So The first one was a forest inventory series. So to offer to landowners and land managers to be able to do a basic inventory of the forest, and kind of going over how to use the tools, and then also how you actually establish plots and set it up so that it can continually provide you valuable information while also being a reasonable and accomplishable for small landowners. Another video series that I worked on was winter prescribed burning, and discussing and talking about how we can utilize this window in the winter for prescribed burning as we're seeing less and less fall opportunities. And along with the ones that you see here, there were some other ones, and specifically some talking about the permitting process for prescribed burning, which is very confusing and varies a lot throughout the state. So working through the content for both of those video series was actually really valuable and definitely gave me a deeper understanding with the prescribed burning, kind of looking at that permitting process and trying to make resources accessible through these videos to people throughout the state so that they could figure out the permitting process in their air district and their county. And it definitely is a barrier. So kind of seeing that and trying to figure it out myself was really valuable. And then same with the forest inventory. It definitely gave me a deeper understanding of why we use the tools the way that we do and what their limitations are. And I think the video editing overall showed me that it is definitely time consuming, especially for me learning the software. But I think in general, it just is very time consuming, but definitely is worth it if it enables you to reach a broader audience. And the forest inventory videos will be used as part, they're available for public on YouTube, but also will be used in the forest stewardship course, which they had to move online this past year due to COVID. So I think hybrid and online courses can benefit a lot from having video material with them as well. And then moving on to some more website and content creation type stuff. This woody biomass utilization website is something that I worked on a lot, trying to update the grant opportunities and funding resources for people who might want to pursue small biomass projects, but also just trying to make it a resource for people who are curious about biomass. There's a lot of different information out there, and trying to enable people to see that it can be that biomass and bioenergy can be a really good tool for dealing with the hazardous fuels buildup that we have in our forests right now throughout California. And that was a really big learning experience for me because I did not know a great deal about biomass going into that. So it was kind of the process of learning it myself and then trying to distill it into a website that was pleasing to look at and was accurate. And then additionally, some social media. I managed the Blodgett Forest and Berkeley Forest, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram throughout the year, which I think gave me the opportunity to focus on the accessibility piece and trying to promote different work that different UC folks might be doing, or research that was coming out of Blodgett and things like that. And then the in progress you see down here, those are some things that I'm working on now, but we'll continue to work on after my term is done as I stay at Blodgett. So just updating the Berkeley Forest website and adding some content there. And then here to the right, you see a sign that I'm working on similar to, we have an interpretive trail at Blodgett right now. And I'm working on creating signage for another one that will be a self-guided tour through the forest that people can just come and walk at their leisure with signs throughout. And the idea is that it will expand the demonstration capacity of Blodgett. And this trail specifically is focusing on units that we have used prescribed burning in. So fire and fire surrogate units where we're comparing mechanical and burning treatments will be featured and talking about that long-term study, which has some really valuable results. And then also just looking at spring versus fall burning and different burns that we've done around the forest. So hopefully we'll open people's eyes a little bit more to prescribed burning and that the forest can look really good afterwards and in the long term. Yeah, so lessons and bigger picture from those things definitely was a really good learning experience with my technical forestry communication and improving those skills, and kind of finding a way to balance making content relatable and user-friendly, but also interesting and detailed enough to be accurate and beneficial. And then moving into what was probably one of the larger components of my experience at Blodgett, just doing prescribed burn prep and implementation was definitely a big component of my term. Here on the right is just a screenshot of the smoke management plan, which is a document that you have to submit to the air quality district for larger prescribed burns. And this was something I did early in my term as well. And created the smoke management plan, submitted to the air district for all of our fall, winter 2020 and spring 2021 burns. So that was a really good learning experience about how to discuss the stands and the treatment that they've seen. And then another part of the burn planning is kind of surveying the units, looking for hazards, including snags, and either getting them on the ground or getting line around them. So different hazard mitigation as part of the prep process, fire line construction, setting up water resources throughout, and just deciding where to stage fuel and water to be most effective during the burn. And then a lot of fuels and weather monitoring leading up to the burns. These here are 10-hour fuel sticks that we use to approximate the moisture content of similar sized fuels. And then that small white sensor is just a sensor that we use to collect humidity and temperature data, which we gather to kind of get an idea of what weather conditions we can expect and how the forecast translates to ground conditions. I also did some live and larger size fuel samplings. Additionally, with the burn prep, moving into after GrizzlyCorps, I will be doing a lot of planning and prep work for our fall 2021 burns, including the items listed above, but also working a lot more intensively on the burn plan and fire modeling and coordination between resources to really make those burns happen. Additionally, with the burn prep, one thing that I worked on a lot throughout my term was trying to build more of a relationship with tribal folks and hopefully getting them out on some prescribed burns or for a visit to Blodgett in the next few months. So really excited about that. Yeah, so just thinking about lessons learned and what I got from that, I think definitely kind of figured out how to prioritize hazard mitigation more and really focus on the severest snags, how to effectively distribute suppression equipment, and really just was eye-opening to the incredible amount of planning and work and prep that goes into any prescribed burn that's going to happen safely and effectively. It just is a lot of work in the field and on the permitting and planning side. And then prescribed burn implementation, I was able to help out with a lot of different burns in both the winter and spring, and then also additionally some hand pile burning. These here at Grouse Ridge, a part of a climate resiliency study going on there, and then also machine pile burning in the winter. So getting to help out with these burns is probably one of the biggest learning experiences for me during my term. And there's I learned a lot about just fire behavior and how to anticipate and think about fire, and specifically the importance of aspect and slope and the position on the slope. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty fire behavior stuff too much. But throughout my term, I kind of took on more leadership roles in the burns and began leading ignition crews during them and directing other folks, which was a really, really valuable experience to see what methods of communication work and the best way to explain things clearly. And yeah, just kind of growing in my leadership and communication abilities in a lot of ways and becoming more confident in my prescribed burning abilities. And then thinking about after prescribed burns, especially with the spring burns, because we are currently in the middle of a very dry spring and summer. We had a lot of unexpected mop up, more than I think was expected. So had the chance to do a lot of mop up and pump and hose operation. We ended up doing a hose lay through the interior of one of our units. So setting that up, and then also kind of training our field crew who started on mop up and the operation of the pumps and kind of how to use hose and the different attachments and types of hose lays. So getting that experience, training them was a valuable learning experience for me too. Here they are doing mop-up. Yeah, so all that mop-up was really valuable, mainly for the skills development, but also it was really eye-opening to see that we didn't have a window to burn in the fall. We had to do those burns in the spring as part of a research project. And I think that's something that we're going to be seeing more and more as we lose the fall window, whether it's weather constraints or like permitting becomes increasingly hard to get in the fall. So thinking about that, spring burning definitely may mean more intensive mop-up as we're having drier and drier winters as well. And then also how to, as we're trying to quantitatively define costs for different treatments, burning is really hard to get an average cost per acre for because of things like mop-up that can drive that cost way up unexpectedly. So kind of thinking about that after that burn as well. Another component of my service was helping with different fuels treatments and preparing for different treatments. So chainsaw work and maintenance. And then along with the chainsaw stuff, when the crew started, I was able to do chainsaw training with them and kind of created some standardized documents that hopefully will benefit future crews as well, in terms of having just training documents to reference. This machine here is a CTL, a compact track loader. It's used for mastication. This is a rotating mastication head. And early in my term, I saw Rob, who works at Blodgett, demonstrate it and thought it was really interesting and eventually got trained to use it. And just this week was able to demonstrate it for the UC Berkeley Forestry Camp students and kind of get them familiar with it and train them on it and get them to each operate it a little bit. So that was kind of a cool process to see that machine and then get to actually learn how to use it too. So thinking about specifically training other folks in different field work, whether it's chainsaw or using equipment or even inventory, I think kind of finding a balance of being thorough, but not overwhelming them. And then also just being at Blodgett, I think is really emphasized to me the amount of operational work that goes into managing a large research forest, and not just the forest, but the property itself. There's always chainsaw work to be done. There's always operational work to be done. I'll try to go through these pretty quick. I'm knowing I'm getting close. But so another portion of my service was getting to do different mapping projects, which was really beneficial to me because I was not super familiar with mapping software. This here is the map from the smoke management plan, the first one I made for Blodgett, just showing all the different units that we plan to burn throughout the year. This is a Bioenergy Facilities Map, and this was part of a bioenergy trifold that some UC Cooperative Extension and Berkeley Forest people are working on as hopefully to help advise policy and kind of emphasize that bioenergy can be a really beneficial way of getting hazardous fuels out of our forests and utilizing them for something other than just pile burning. And it's kind of intended to show the gaps in the infrastructure and where these facilities can be most beneficial. Treatment map for Russell Forest and the Berkeley Forest property, and operational maps for 2021 burns and different treatments and burns that we're doing. So all these different mapping projects were really valuable just to get more comfortable with the software, and it really emphasized to me that how important maps are as a communication tool, especially for prescribed burns. I think having a basic topo map can make a huge difference and can streamline communication when it really matters on a burn. And just from a management perspective, as a manager, being able to make basic maps really quickly and just update them, whether it's for a contractor or your field crew, so that they can have a better understanding of what they're doing when they go out into the field. And then I think besides the prescribed burning, the kind of getting to do more trainings and workshops was probably the other largest component of my service. Getting to help with the forest stewardship workshops, which is pictured here, folks learning how to use tree measurement tools and things like that. And again, every single training that I helped with, I felt like I got a lot out of it too. I learned more about the content, usually, at least a little bit, but also really learned more about how to communicate it effectively and explain things effectively. And a big part of that, I think, was getting to work alongside Ariel and Rob and different folks at Blodgett and different cooperative extension people who have such a great knowledge base, but also have been explaining and teaching this stuff for a long time. So getting to see that the way that they approach it was really valuable. So with that was for stewardship, and then kind of looking at more prescribed burn trainings. These are some community college students that came up to do a little prescribed burn that are in a natural resources program. And it seemed really valuable for them to kind of have that perspective of burning. And then we even had some high school students come, and they loved it. They loved being around the fire. And again, with both of those workshops, I think I learned a lot about the things that you need to say and things that need to be said twice, maybe, and just emphasizing the really important stuff. And then also, this is a larger landowner workshop that we hosted at Blodgett with one of our, I think the last burn window that we got in the spring on May 1st. We were able to host this larger workshop and just burn out a small unit. And it's really valuable to see the questions that people ask and what they're curious about with prescribed burning and what they would need to do something like this on their own property. And then we also had different groups of students come up for smaller trainings with forest inventory and just tree ID and things like that. And then as far as the trainings, what I really got out of those and thinking about teaching specifically, diagrams help, even if you're drawing it in the dirt, saying the important stuff twice, emphasizing situational awareness no matter what the setting, but especially in prescribed burning, that you need to keep your head up. I think when you're new to that sort of situation, it's easy to put your head down and get focused in on one aspect. And then thinking about trying to present the material in as many forms as possible for students who learn different ways. So explaining it, but then also letting everyone try it out for themselves and try the drip torch and kind of get the experience with it, or diagrams if they're more of a visual learner. And I think with the forest stewardship workshops, as things, if they continue to be online, I think having just 1 or 2 field days can be really effective and help folks get a lot more out of those trainings. Okay, so that's most of what I did for my definitely was a little bit rushed, but yeah, that's the majority of what my service was, and I'm really grateful. I feel like this term offered me the opportunity to really expand on my forestry knowledge in a huge way, but also on my leadership and communication skills, and getting to train folks and be involved in teaching folks stuff that I was learning about also was a great learning experience, and kind of allowed me to bring together my science background with my practical fire background. And I think Blodgett was like an ideal place to do that. My term, I felt like a lot of what I was doing was researching and learning information, and then kind of trying to find a way to distill it to present it effectively to others, and then also potentially using social media and other online or technology forms to promote that. So whether it was making a video series and promoting it through the social media, or hosting a workshop, kind of just trying to figure out the best ways to share and communicate information. So moving forward, I will be at Blodgett for the next few months. Probably will be doing a lot of prescribed burn planning and prep, and then still continuing with some content creation and outreach and research assistance and inventory and things like that. I know I'm just a little bit past time, so I just wanted to say thank you so much to the GrizzlyCorps folks who made this program possible. You really have made so many resources available to us. And then also to everyone at Blodgett and Berkeley Forest and all the UC extension advisors that I worked with. And it was such a resource for me with all my questions and just always were willing to answer my questions and help me seek out professional development opportunities as well. I don't know if we have time for questions, but if so, I am all set.
Yeah, I think we do have time for one or two questions if anyone does care to put those in the chat, or feel free to also raise your hand or use the Q&A function. Yeah, so thank you so much, Kestrel. That was such a thorough presentation. It's so great to see your learning in the summary. Done a lot. Got some congratulations in the chat otherwise. That's great. Well, with that, then, if there aren't any questions, yeah, thank you so much again, Kestrel, for the wonderful presentation. And yeah, we'll move forward with welcoming our next fellow.
Looks like we got one question, if you don't mind, Michelle.
So sorry, didn't see
yeah,
that.
Ben asked, Kestrel, where do you plan to pursue Indigenous or cultural fire?
I'm not sure. I guess if they mean in relation to Blodgett, we are talking to the Auburn Rancheria, and then also some other local groups, and hope to get them involved in the burning. I think it would be great to have them present at every burn we do. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question was asking. I guess from a personal perspective, I also do hope to volunteer more and get involved with more tribal burning opportunities.
Thanks, Kestrel.